Star Wars opens not with functioning institutions, but with emergencies, alarms, and last-minute rescues, a cinematic language that immediately tells the audience something has already gone wrong. At a systemic level, long before any hero ignites a blade or pulls a trigger, the galaxy is already in failure mode, and the story only begins once collapse is irreversible. Every iconic heroic entrance in the saga functions as a narrative admission that ordinary governance has ceased to work, because heroes are not maintenance tools, they are emergency measures. Luke Skywalker is not trained to manage trade corridors or planetary arbitration. He is trained to survive long enough to destroy something that never should have been built. His very necessity is evidence of bureaucratic catastrophe. When a farm boy must be fast-tracked from moisture evaporators to galactic savior in a matter of days, it means every stabilizing layer beneath him has already failed. Intelligence services failed to stop the Death Star. Regulatory bodies failed to halt its construction. Diplomatic channels failed to prevent its deployment, and military deterrence failed to neutralize it before it reached operational status. The Death Star itself is often framed as a symbol of tyranny, but it is equally a symbol of administrative collapse. No healthy polity allows a single weapons platform to concentrate that much destructive authority without checks, oversight, or civilian accountability. The fact that it exists at all proves the system was already hollow. Heroes in Star Wars do not prevent disasters. They respond after the damage is already unavoidable. Alderaan is not saved, the Clone Wars are not prevented, the Jedi Purge is not stopped. The Hosnian system is not evacuated. Each tragedy occurs because institutions designed to foresee and mitigate these outcomes are absent, paralyzed, or compromised. Luke destroying the Death Star is framed as hope, but structurally it is damage control. It does not rebuild Alderaan, restore public trust, or dismantle the industrial networks that produce the station. It removes a symptom, not the disease, and the galaxy immediately proves this by producing Death Star 2. Anakin Skywalker ending battles on the ground does not resolve the economic incentives driving the Clone Wars. The conflict persists because the underlying systems of trade monopolies, political gridlock, and corporate sovereignty remain untouched. Anakin wins engagements, but the war continues until the Republic itself is transformed into something unrecognizable. Rey defeating Palpatine is similarly symbolic rather than structural. It halts a resurrection, but it does not explain how the Final Order amassed fleets, labour, and logistics in secret, nor does it establish safeguards to prevent the next hidden armada. The victory is mythic. The aftermath is administrative silence. Star Wars repeatedly equates victory with the removal of a villain. Yet, history within the universe shows that removing individuals does not stabilise systems. Palpatine dies multiple times. Authoritarianism does not, because the scaffolding that enables it is never fully dismantled or replaced with resilient alternatives. The Jedi Order represents the most glaring example of moral authority substituting for functional administration, rather than building transparent, accountable institutions. The Republic relied on a small, mystically legitimized elite to act as peacekeepers, judges, generals, and symbols of justice, concentrating legitimacy in belief rather than process. This arrangement functioned only as long as the Jedi were perceived as infallible. Once doubt entered public consciousness, the entire structure collapsed because there was no civilian counterpart prepared to assume responsibility, no independent courts, no neutral enforcement agencies, no redundancy built into the system. The Jedi were never designed to scale. 10,000 monks cannot govern 1,000,000 worlds, and yet the Republic behaved as if moral clarity could replace bureaucratic capacity. When the Jedi fell, the Republic had no institutional immune system left to resist authoritarian infection. Order 66 succeeds not just because of treachery, but because the Republic lacks civilian oversight of its military. Clone armies answer to executive command without legislative counterbalance, and emergency powers persist without expiration. The Jedi are removed, and nothing remains to slow the transformation. The Empire is often reduced to cartoon villainy, but its actual strength lies in organisation, standardisation, and procedural enforcement. It builds fleets efficiently, moves resources reliably, and imposes consistent law across vast territory. These are not trivial achievements. They are the core functions of governance. its trains run on time, its supply lines function, its regional governors have clear authority. The empire works because it is administratively coherent. Its crime is not inefficiency, but moral bankruptcy, which makes it more dangerous, not less. The lesson Star Wars inadvertently teaches is that efficiency without ethics leads to oppression. But inefficiency with good intentions leads to chaos. The Republic embodies the latter, paralyzed by committees, captured by corporate interests, and reliant on symbolic guardians rather than structural reform. When the Empire falls, the Rebel Alliance celebrates liberation, but immediately faces a vacuum it is unprepared to fill. Guerrilla movements excel at disruption, not administration. They dismantle power faster than they can replace it, and Star Wars repeatedly glosses over this transition. The destruction of the second Death Star is not followed by a detailed plan for customs enforcement, tax harmonization, or interstellar dispute resolution. Instead, the narrative jumps ahead. Implying peace simply emerges once the villain is gone, an assumption, contradicted by every historical analogy. Victory exposes the rebels' lack of planners, auditors, and civil servants. Their leadership is composed of generals and symbols, not administrators. Mon Mothma can inspire unity. But inspiration does not repair infrastructure or regulate hyperspace lanes. Freed systems fragment, because freedom without paperwork produces uncertainty, trade collapses, local strongmen rise, and security becomes privatized. The galaxy becomes vulnerable precisely because no boring, competent machinery is in place to stabilize it. Star Wars consistently frames bureaucracy as an obstacle to heroism, but in doing so it misidentifies the source of suffering. It is not regulation that causes tyranny. It is unaccountable power, and the absence of regulation allows that power to concentrate unchecked. Every time a hero is required to save the day, it is because a system failed quietly beforehand. No one noticed the budgets, no one audited the shipyards, no one tracked the flow of resources, and by the time a lightsaber ignites, the crisis is already terminal. The galaxy celebrates legends because legends are visible. A single face is easier to follow than 1,000 committees, but visibility is not durability. Heroes burn bright and brief. Institutions persist, at least when they are allowed to exist. Star Wars is not actually a story about hope conquering evil. It is a cautionary tale about what happens when societies neglect the unglamorous work of governance, replacing it with faith in exceptional individuals, and then act surprised when collapse repeats. The tragedy is not that heroes fail, but that they are needed at all. A functional galaxy would never require a chosen one to restore balance. It would already have mechanisms to prevent imbalance from reaching existential scale. By the time Star Wars reaches its later eras, the pattern is no longer subtle. The galaxy has learned nothing from collapse after collapse. Instead of investing in resilient institutions, it continues to gamble on charismatic figures, mistaking presence for stability and symbolism for infrastructure, repeating the same strategic error under different banners. Palpatine does not seize power because he is uniquely evil. He succeeds because the Republic is structurally incapable of resisting a skilled manipulator. Emergency powers are granted because no permanent administrative solution exists. The Senate applauds because procedure has replaced substance, and oversight has become ceremonial rather than functional. Leia Organa, Luke Skywalker, and Mon Mothma are treated as moral anchors of the post-imperial era. But morality is not a system. It cannot process trade disputes, manage planetary debt, or enforce consistent law across hyperspace. When these figures step away or die, nothing remains beneath them. The galaxy keeps choosing faces over frameworks because faces are legible. A single leader offers emotional clarity, while institutions are diffuse, slow, and impersonal. Yet that slowness is precisely what makes them stable. They absorb shocks instead of amplifying them. Charismatic leadership becomes a shortcut that replaces the difficult work of institutional reform rather than rebuilding the Senate with stronger oversight. The New Republic demilitarizes and trusts in its own symbolism, assuming that because it is not the Empire, it cannot become vulnerable in the same way. This assumption proves fatal. The First Order rises not through brilliance but through neglect. Shipyards operate unnoticed, funding moves without scrutiny, and intelligence agencies remain fragmented. The galaxy watches for another Vader, not another balance sheet anomaly. Bureaucracy is portrayed as dull obstruction throughout the saga. Lines, permits, councils, and hearings are framed as delays to justice, but in reality they are friction points designed to slow catastrophic decisions. The absence of friction allows momentum to turn into disaster. Trade regulations prevent resource hoarding, tax policy funds infrastructure, dispute resolution averts armed conflict. None of these processes generate legends, yet each one quietly prevents war. Star Wars omits them not because they are unimportant, but because they are invisible when they succeed. The Clone Wars are often blamed on ideology, but their true enabler is administrative negligence. Corporations are allowed private armies, conflict of interest rules are non-existent, and procurement contracts are weaponized. Corruption thrives not because of greed alone, but because no one is auditing. Without inspectors, power consolidates rapidly. The Senate debates while supply chains militarize. The Jedi sense disturbance in the Force, but no civilian authority senses irregularities in logistics. The war begins long before the first shot is fired. The Empire inherits this concentration and refines it, removing the illusion of oversight entirely, yet its downfall is not caused by inefficiency, but by over-reliance on fear. Fear suppresses dissent but also blinds leadership to structural weakness, a flaw heroes exploit tactically, not administratively. When heroes succeed, they often leave behind a vacuum. Generals retire, Jedi vanish, symbols fade, but bureaucrats, when allowed to exist, provide continuity across generations. Star Wars consistently eliminates its bureaucratic class, either through purge or neglect, ensuring instability persists. Luke Skywalker rebuilds an order, not a system. When it falls, nothing absorbs the shock. Rey inherits a myth, not an institution. The cycle repeats because legends do not scale. They inspire briefly, then disappear. The New Republic's failure is not cowardice, it is structural naivety. Demilitarization without regulatory expansion leaves systems exposed. Peace is treated as a moral state, rather than an administrative condition that must be maintained daily. Hosnian Prime is destroyed not because the Republic lacked courage, but because it lacked redundancy. Centralization without safeguards creates a single point of failure, a mistake any risk assessor would flag immediately, had one been empowered to do so. Heroes create emotional closure, not logistical resolution. The galaxy cheers at the fall of a tyrant, but no one asks who will manage freight insurance, planetary reconstruction, or refugee integration. Those unanswered questions become the seeds of the next conflict. Star Wars refuses to show the real ending, because it is incompatible with myth. Lasting peace would involve committees, boring compromises, and incremental reform. Not a final duel, it would require patience rather than destiny. A competent galactic civil service would not fit on a poster. Auditors do not wield glowing blades. Urban planners do not topple regimes, yet they save more lives over time than any hero ever could. The saga accidentally argues against its own aesthetic by showing that every legendary victory decays into renewed crisis when unsupported by administration. It reveals that the true antagonist is not evil, but neglect of governance. If Star Wars ever ended honestly, it would fade out not on a battlefield, but on a chamber where laws are enforced, budgets reviewed, and oversight restored, an ending that lacks spectacle, but ensures survival. The galaxy keeps choosing legends over logistics because legends are comforting. They promise simple answers to complex problems. Bureaucracy offers no such comfort, only stability. And stability does not feel like a story until it is gone. This is the unspoken conclusion of Star Wars. Heroes are necessary only in worlds that refuse to invest in systems, and as long as the galaxy celebrates myth while neglecting administration, it will remain trapped in an endless loop of collapse, rebellion, and regret.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. My main channel is Critical Analysis Hub, where I post Star Wars content about the movies. My secondary channel is Critical Analysis Hub Plus, where I focus on the shows of Star Wars. And my third channel is Critical Analysis Hub XP, where I post comic books. Be sure to take a moment and check them out. Thanks, and may the Force be with you.